Hello and welcome to Techiechap. Well, it's been an interesting week, it has to be said for me. I was doing a review using the laptop that you can see on the desk behind me there. However, whilst doing the review and recording the review, the hard drive decided to give up, and that kind of stopped the whole review. And I have a new hard drive winging its way via the post, and that should arrive in a few days. So that review laptop, or my regular review laptop, was now out of commission. However, waiting in the wings was my Dell Precision M45 laptop. This thing is an absolute beast of a laptop. It weighs about 4 ton and you can definitely do weights with this thing. It is 12 years old. I mean, look at this thing. I think it's reinforced with steel. It was considered at the time one of the best laptops you could get and cost many thousands of pounds. Nowadays you could probably pick one up for about 60 quid on the eBay. However, it's the only review laptop I've got, so I thought I would carry on and do a review of FreeBSD 13.1 running the Enlightenment Desktop environment. I thought the Enlightenment Desktop environment would be ideal because it is a very light desktop, and so it would be ideal for an very old laptop like this that is running an i5 M560 processor. So let's find out how I got on after the intro. Here we are. This is the Enlightenment Desktop, and as you can see, I've got a few terminal windows open here. I have changed a couple of bits like the default wallpaper, and already you can see as well that this looks quite different from a number of other desktop environments, and that's one of the reasons why I picked this. But also take a look at the terminal here, and you can see that the resource usage is tiny. In particular, note the memory usage. Currently I am using OBS to record this video, record the desktop and record my audio, and you can see out of the 8 gig available, it's currently using 144 megabytes. I mean, that is pretty impressive, it has to be said. Admittedly, I'm not using my normal video in the corner, and that's because this laptop is so old. I don't want this one to blow up as well, and so I'm giving it a little bit of an easier time by not running my webcam in the corner and just recording my audio and showing this desktop. But given that I'm running OBS and recording audio, and also I'm recording this desktop, the CPU usage is also pretty good, and this is one of the reasons for choosing Enlightenment. I think Enlightenment really is about as close as you can get to running a basic window manager, and this is one of the ideas I've been toying around in my head with FreeBSD, is really setting up a window manager only and not going for a desktop environment. So the difference between a desktop environment and a window manager is the window manager is what controls the windows, funny enough, but it comes with nothing else. So you have tiling Windows manager as well as these window managers as well, and essentially that's all you get with a window manager. You have to install all the other tools, including the text edit tools, all of those things you have to install yourself. But the power that gives you as a user is a system that is truly configured to what you need and desire on your PC. When you install a desktop environment, and Enlightenment is really a desktop environment now, it did start as a window manager, you essentially get a whole bunch of other tools that perhaps you didn't ask for or need, and they get installed as part of the installation. One nice thing about Enlightenment, however, is that even though it's a desktop environment, it's fairly light. The installation for this was 715 megabytes, which is pretty tiny given that I installed KDE the other day on FreeBSD, and that was over 2 gigabytes of download on KDE desktop environment. So it goes to show how different these are. Also in KDE I was using always over a gig of memory of my 8 gigs available, so it's pretty high memory usage as well. So these are the reasons for showing off Enlightenment, particularly on this older laptop. It seems to be well suited towards a laptop with limited resource. Like I say, installing Enlightenment is pretty simple and straightforward thanks to the package manager in FreeBSD, and it's a question of just typing pkg install Enlightenment, and that will then go off and it will query the FreeBSD repository catalog, and it will go off and download everything you need for the Enlightenment window manager. Once you've installed that, there is an extra file that you have to edit, and I'll just show you that here, and that's the .xinitrc. So let's take a look at that. There we are, and this is the only line you need to enter in that file. When you do that, you're effectively creating a brand new file, and there won't be any new text or any existing text in there. It'll just be a blank file. So this is really telling X to start Enlightenment when you put in X start X. Sorry, I'll get it the right way around. Start X from your FreeBSD command prompt. So this basically tells it to start Enlightenment, and this text editor is really easy to use. If you just press escape, you can press return to leave the editor, and if you've made a change, it will prompt you if you want to save it. So really nice editor. That's again comes with FreeBSD, and it's simply called Edit. Very easy to remember. Great. So Enlightenment is pretty easy to install. It runs very low memory usage, and also it's pretty good on CPU usage on low-end laptops. But how does it feel as a desktop? Well, it's pretty different, it has to be said. For example, if I left click on the desktop, I will bring up my main menu with all the tools in there. In the same way, if I click on this arrow up here, this will also bring up the main menu. One of the reasons for this, and particularly if you have a large screen estate like an external monitor or something like that, is you can just click on the desktop anywhere and bring up your menu, rather than having to go back to the taskbar, the dock, or whatever it is to find the application that you need. Instead, if you're anywhere on the desktop, you just click left, and there you go, there's your applications. Now that takes a bit of getting used to, especially for someone like me who has that muscle memory of left clicking everywhere on the desktop to click away from a window, an open window. However, once you get used to it, it's actually quite nice. One of the other features is also something called favorite applications, and as you can see, I've added Thunar file manager because Enlightenment is filled with XFCE tools to kind of give you some tools that are useful to have when you're running a desktop from the word go. XFCE terminal emulator, and OBS Studio, which obviously I'm using to record this. Okay, so if I right click on the desktop, as you can see, those favorites now appear on the desktop. So if there are applications that you are running constantly, or you need to get to very quickly, for example the terminal emulator, and you're using a mouse, you can just right click on the desktop and those favorites will appear straight away. This is another nice tool I like about the Enlightenment window manager. So what do we have here on the left? Now I've orientated this on the left side, but this dock type thing appears on the bottom by default after installation of Enlightenment. This is actually called a shelf and not a dock. So in the world of Enlightenment, this is called a shelf, and it's designed to be where you put useful things. If we look at this, we have a power button for turning off and on and logging off, for example. We have our country selection tool. We have a nice volume up and down, so you can see that changing as I change my volume up and down on my laptop. Battery indicator. We also have a CPU speed manipulator, so you can actually change your CPU speed. Now this is a very old laptop and I'm not going to fiddle around with the CPU speed, but it's nice to see that that is there if you for whatever reason want to run slower than you're already running. There is also a temperature gauge, a backlight tool, so you can switch your backlight on and off if you have backlight on your laptop. This particular laptop doesn't, so a little bit useless, that one. And then these are the running applications that you have installed. At the top here you have your spaces, and something that's nice about that, if I just launch something here. Okay, so that's it. That's on my desktop now. Let me just make that, let me just put that there. So you can see that on the workspace. Now if I want to move that, I can move that to that workspace, switch across, and there it is in exactly the place that I placed it on the workspace image. So these are workspaces that you can actually interact with, which is actually, I think, really nice. I have seen that before on other distros, but it's nice to see it again here in Enlightenment. Workspaces that you really can interact with from the bar here, from the shelf here. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so what applications do you get with Enlightenment? Well, you get some pretty basic tools. As I've said, it integrates with the XFCE application, so you get a lot of the default applications that you would find in XFCE. You get some development stuff, you get your internet. You don't actually get a web browser by default with this, so you do have to go off and install a web browser of your choice. And again, that is pretty simple. So I right click on the desktop, I launch XFCE terminal, and again here we go, PKG, and we're just going to do a search for Firefox, and there we are. So we have two versions of Firefox. We have Firefox 104, which is the latest version of Firefox available from the FreeBSD repository, and then we have the extended support release 91.13 as well. Installing these is very simple using the PKG tool, so it is as simple as typing Firefox -104, and that's all you need to type. You don't need to type the rest of it. It knows that you want Firefox -104, and if I was to change that to ESR, it would go off and look for the ESR. Actually, remember to type SU to elevate your privileges as well. There we go. Let's try again, shall we? PKG install Firefox -ESR, because we already have 104 installed. There it goes. It's going to go off now and query the FreeBSD repository, and it's going to come back with the ESR. That's all you need to type. We're not going to install the extended support release of Firefox, given that we already have Firefox installed as the latest version. So let's just go back and we'll take a look at that, see how fast that launches on this laptop. There we go. So that's launched pretty fast. That has launched pretty fast. Let me just see if, okay, so I still have HTOP running. Obviously launching a web browser and also having OBS in running as well my CPU is now getting a little bit warmer. There's a bit more going on. And for example, if I was to open YouTube, let's see what happens now. All of a sudden CPU spikes at 100. It's thinking about it. But look at that, the memory usage is still very, very low, given that I've got Firefox running, I've got YouTube open within Firefox, and let's just push it a little bit. We'll open another tab, and we'll just go to Reddit and see what's on there. Look at that. So memory management within Enlightenment is very, very cool, and it's very light. However, obviously I have a very low spec CPU in here with my i5, so it is starting to struggle, but I can tell you that without OBS running and running day to day, it's fairly nippy and actually works really, really well. So I'll give my CPU a rest and I will close down Firefox, and you can see straight away my machine's gasping for breath and the CPU's now the CPU threads are now calming down a bit. The Enlightenment File Manager, and now that's the one thing that's slightly confusing. The Enlightenment File Manager is quite useful. It's a very, very basic file manager, and I think that's why they've included XFC Thunar in here as well. If we just go to file manager here, so you've got two file managers that are installed by default with Enlightenment, and that can make for a little bit of a confusing experience for the end user, because if you go up here and you go navigate, by default navigate will use the Enlightenment file manager. Also interesting is the Enlightenment file manager has turned on by default, whereas Thunar does not have previews. What else do we have here? So if we go to applications and system, we get Xterm by default and we get Thunar file manager by default. I've installed HTOP, and it's nice it's included HTOP as an application here, and I've also added OctoPKG. So if you want a GUI package manager and you're not comfortable with using PKG in the terminal, then I can recommend for FreeBSD something called OctoPKG. And OctoPKG really is very similar to something like Synaptic. So if I do a search for Kdenlive and we look at the repositories, there you go. So that's gone off and it's queried the FreeBSD repositories and it's found Kdenlive. Now I already have Kdenlive installed on here, so I'm not actually going to install it, but I'll show you one more thing as well that is a nice part of OctoPKG, and that is being able to check updates. So you can go off and you can essentially check the updates available for FreeBSD, and I think that's pretty cool. In terms of managing the FreeBSD updates itself. There we go. So no updates available at this stage. Fantastic. So OctoPKG is a tool I would recommend if you aren't comfortable running PKG in the terminal. What I can tell you as a beginner FreeBSD user is actually I'm starting to get more used to and more comfortable with running PKG from the terminal, and actually getting more comfortable with the terminal altogether, because there are certain things you have to change and alter to get things like your NVIDIA card working, for example. And you spend a lot of time in the terminal adding those configuration files. So if we go to settings here, and one thing I will point out in the settings is scaling, and that is an option that you are presented with when you first install Enlightenment, and by default it is set to 1.0 factor, and that's pretty tiny. I've actually increased that to 1.5 just really so that you can see what I'm doing on the screen, and yeah, that's really for that reason only. And there's all sorts of controls here. You've got window display, so you can change things about the window display. There is quite a bit you can actually change within Enlightenment to alter the way it looks. Talking of looks, you can download themes for Enlightenment, which is obviously pretty nice. You can change things like the borders around the windows, so you can have a borderless window style if you want. And yeah, it's very fully featured. Of course, there are wallpapers bundled with this, and there's a pretty good selection of wallpapers in here. If we just go to green maple, we'll just get that on there like that. And that's green maple. Ooh, let's see. Let's go to red maple. There we go. And as you can see, it's changing dynamically in the background straight away. There we go. So that's quite good as well. You get your screen setup tools as well as where you can control your screen lock and your virtual desktops, and that's all pretty neat. So it's pretty fully featured as a desktop environment. You can change an awful lot about it, which is very nice indeed. If I just click on Enlightenment here, as you can see, we are running the very latest version of Enlightenment 0.25.3, which was released in February, I think, this year. And yeah, it's pretty good. I like it a lot, and I certainly like it a lot for this particular laptop, a 12-year-old laptop which really was starting to become a bit of a doorstop, or perhaps something to practice my weights on. But with Enlightenment installed on it, it's really had a new lease of life. Now, there are also lots of Linux versions, like Puppy Linux, for example, that would run just as well on here, I'm sure. But in this case, we're looking at FreeBSD, and we're also looking at how well FreeBSD can run and how light it can run on a fairly old laptop. It really can revive them. So I'm not going to give this a rating as such, because it is simply the Enlightenment Desktop. I am very pleased with it, however, and I do think it's pretty nice. It's certainly revived this old lunk of a laptop here, and I'm enjoying using it. Obviously, I'm spending a lot of time dropping back out to FreeBSD because that's kind of what I'm learning and what I'm getting used to. But actually, this is making my experience quite enjoyable, because when I need to use a desktop, I simply type Start X, and I'm in a standard GUI desktop again. And that is running very light on resources, and I can open my web browser, do what I need to do, then drop back out into FreeBSD. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this experience of learning how to get to grips with FreeBSD 13.1. So this has been my review of FreeBSD 13.1 running the very latest Enlightenment desktop environment, and I've got to say it's gone fairly well. If you've enjoyed this review of FreeBSD 13.1 then running the Enlightenment desktop, then please do click on like and subscribe. If you would like to see more FreeBSD content, then please do let me know, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.